Hello, my name is Clare and I'm a lecturer in philosophy at Durham University.
Hi, my name is Rachael Wiseman. I'm a lecturer in philosophy at University of Liverpool.
I'm a recipient of a British Academy Rising Star Engagement Award for some work that I'm doing with Rachael.
So the British Academy is a fellowship of scholars and researchers, and they fund research in the humanities and social sciences. And Clare and I have been really lucky that they've supported our research on a group of 4 amazing women philosophers for several years now.
Yeah, so the women that we're looking at are Elizabeth Anscombe, Phillipa, Iris Murdoch, and Mary Midgley, and we're actually trying to write a book about their lives and their philosophy. And we're trying to argue that actually what we have here is a philosophical school that hasn't really been recognized yet, but it's a bit tricky trying to write together in this lockdown period.
Yeah, so one of the things that's really helped us to write together is the books that we share. So we've got a number of books in common, and we talk about those books all the time. So in a way, the books that inspire us have been bringing us together during the lockdown. And we're going to talk to you today, or show you today, 2 of those books that have been especially inspirational. And they're both books by Mary Midgley.
Yes. So the first one is this, What is Philosophy For? So Mary wrote this when she was 98 and it was published it was published just before she died in 2018 when she was 99. And these our copies are particularly special to us because they're inscribed. So there's mine, and Rachel's is
yeah, mine says Rachael Wiseman gets What is Philosophy For because she's a very helpful girl.
Yeah, really helpful. So, what is philosophy for? Why is this? Do you want to say, Rachel?
So I was just going to say this book's so inspiring in lockdown because I think one of the things that when you're a philosopher, you feel like what you're doing is maybe not really connecting to reality. And I think when the world's in a kind of upside down state as it is in the moment, it can feel really indulgent to be reading philosophy books. And in a way, this book is a little manifesto that says, no, it's not. It's really, really important what you're doing.
Yeah, and Mary tells us, what a philosopher should do, like what is the job of a philosopher. And she writes, just give her a few words here. The philosopher's business is not, as some people mistakenly think, merely to look inward. It is to organize what concerns everybody. Philosophy aims to bring together those aspects of life that have not yet been properly connected so as to make a more coherent, more workable world picture. And that coherent world picture is not a private luxury. It's something we all need for our lives. So she has this idea that philosophy isn't a luxury, it's something that we have to do. And when she's elucidating this and developing this idea, she comes up with this incredible image. She says that philosophers are a bit like plumbers. And the reason she thinks this is that, our conceptual schemes are very elaborate systems, a bit like plumbing systems are very elaborate, but we don't tend to notice them. And she thinks that philosophers need to be able to sort of sniff out and work out when a conceptual scheme is no longer working properly. And philosophers need to do the really hard intellectual work of pulling up the floorboards and trying to work out where the blockage is, where the conceptual scheme isn't working, and like disconnect it where it's not working. And then incredibly inspiringly, do you want to say something about the inspirational bit?
Well, I mean, it's already inspirational, I suppose, what you just said, Claire, like when we're living in times like this idea that the philosopher has a really important role to play in working out what's going wrong and where all this chaos is coming from. But yeah, then the really exciting bit is that Mary thinks that philosophers need to come up with new visions that can replace the bad ones that are causing all this chaos and somehow be things that can kind of weave our lives back together again. And for this, she thinks that we need help from poets. So one of the things that Clare and I have been really inspired with in this book is how we might have conversations with poets and other creative people. And I think during lockdown, that's been something that's come up a lot, isn't it? I mean, people have really turned to poetry. So I think we can see that Mary was sort of really onto something there.
Yeah, and I'll just mention really briefly that we're running a commemorative project for Mary. It's called Notes from a Biscuit Tin, and that's the website address. We'll show it to you at the end of this video. And that project involves bringing together philosophers and poets to bring them together to have conversations around themes from Mary Midgley's work. And it's actually inspired by our meetings with Mary. So we used to go and meet Mary for tea or coffee every now and again. Since 2015, we went for about 3 years, and we talked to her about philosophy and have biscuits and tea. And so we're trying to encourage these conversations between philosophers and poets over sharing biscuits. And in fact, well, it's all a bit mad. We've sent Mary Midgley's biscuits in on a round the world tour, and that is the kind of material anchor for these conversations that we're having. And in a way, what we're trying to do there is kind of create a different sort of structure or way of thinking about how we might do philosophy together collaboratively. And that again follows Mary's vision that philosophy is actually a partly creative discipline. We're also trying to kind of partly replicate the kinds of conversations that we imagine might have taken place between the 4 women that are the subject of our book. So this is the second book that we thought we'd share with you that's inspired us. It's Mary's autobiography, The Isle of Minerva, and here's a lovely picture of her unlocked down on a boat.
So yeah, one of the things about our research, I suppose, from the very beginning is that we've been really interested in the stories of the women and their personal biographies, and we've been thinking about that a lot in relation to them as women and what it's like to be a woman in philosophy. And we felt that telling the story of their lives would be a really inspiring thing for other women who were doing philosophy. But actually returning to those biographies and memoirs, and in particular The Isle of Minerva, in the context of the lockdown and coronavirus, I think has really brought that historical dimension to life in new ways. So listening to Mary talk about the disruption of the Second World War and the way that every aspect of their lives and relationships were kind of unearthed by that, and thinking about what it is to do philosophy in a time when the future and the present are kind of scary and uncertain, it's been sort of really inspiring and exciting. And I don't know if you agree with that, Claire.
Yeah, I do. And like there's certain ideas as well that that seem more pertinent than ever, which hopefully we'll be able to bring them out when we manage to write this book finally. But how about we give Mary the last word?
Yeah, lovely.
A couple of lines. Actually, they're the last few lines from this book, What is Philosophy For? So she writes, I suspect that philosophical reasoning will now become rather important. So she's writing these words in 2018. We shall need to think about how best to think about new and difficult topics, how to imagine them, how to visualize them, how to fit them into a convincing world picture. And if we don't do that for ourselves, it's hard to see who will be able to do it for us.
Oh.
So